Hi and welcome to The Light Leaders, a podcast for light workers who want more money, power and impact. I'm your host, Alex E. Lember. I believe that we are currently in the middle of a global awakening of humanity and that leveraging entrepreneurship is the fastest way to raise the consciousness of our planet. So in this podcast, I interview light workers and conscious entrepreneurs who follow their soul mission and have built a business around it. I call them light leaders, and this is the new paradigm. You will hear their stories and, more importantly, receive tools, tips, and strategies on how you can also impact more people and grow your business while following your soul mission. If you hear little nuggets you love and you'd like to share, screenshot this episode and share on your Instagram stories. Make sure to tag us at the Light Leaders Podcast and we will repost. There's a device I love and use almost every day. It's called the Healy. It sends specific frequencies to the body. It's been developed by quantum physicists from Germany, and it is the next evolution of health and well-being. It has amazing results. On top of it, it's an entrepreneurial opportunity. This is how I monetize my lifestyle, my brand, and this podcast. So if you're interested in getting this amazing device for yourself, or also in the entrepreneurial opportunity, I would love to help you. You can go to www.thelightleaders.org/Healy, Healy. Hi, and welcome to this new episode of The Light Leaders. Today, I'm with Veronica Kaulinis. She is the founder of Vulnerable AF, which is a global movement that encourages vulnerability, expansion, intimate, deep, and thought-provoking conversations in a safe space. Her work is inspired by authentic relating, nonviolent communication, transformational development, and embodiment practices. She is passionate about connection, collaboration, and community. Veronica, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I'll start with an important question. What are you grateful for today?
I'm grateful for being alive right now. Yeah. And the possibility of living where I'm living here in Bali. I feel really, really grateful for that.
Good place to be in these crazy times.
Yeah, definitely.
I love to give the listener a bit of a snapshot of what you stand for and how you do it before we dive. So can you share a little bit about your vision for the world? What's your why, your drive, and how your business, Vulnerable AF, is helping to bring that into the world?
So my mission for the world is to dissolve any negative stigmas that people have about vulnerability. And I'm a stand for people to take off the mask that they wear and stop pretending to be being someone that they're not in order to make other people happy or more comfortable around them. So Vulnerable AF was inspired by me and inspired by heartbreak and my own fears around vulnerability, and inspired by the mask that I was wearing to cover up when I was people pleasing, looking for approval, and deeply afraid of connection.
And we'll go a bit more into that.
Yeah.
And then with Vulnerable AF, how do you help?
How do I help? Yeah. So I help women, mainly entrepreneurial women, be more brave and be vulnerable and take off the mask that they wear so that they can feel courageous in relationships and in life.
And mainly through coaching?
Through coaching and through online workshops and So I lead online workshops, coaching, and online retreats.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I'd love to go into your journey and how you
Mhm.
got into it. Like what made vulnerability so important to you?
Mm. So, I mean, I started Vulnerable AF 2.5 years ago now, 2.5 years ago. And I have definitely morphed into different versions of myself over the past few years. And when I first started Vulnerable AF, I was living in New York. I'm from New York originally, born and raised. And, coming from this hustle bustle life, working in the city, being a part of different communities. I was really into transformational development programs, and I really got into personal development at that time. And I remember, really living my life pretending to be perfect or pretending to look really good because I was so afraid of messing up. Um, I was a part of all these different communities. I had different friends and different networks, and I also like my first business when I really was heavily into personal. I'm still into personal development, of course, but I'm always learning and developing myself. But there was a particular education that I was a part of and doing at the time, and I got into network marketing, which was my
Mhm.
first business as a coach. I worked for a health company, and I remember like just becoming obsessed with the idea of like traveling and starting my own life and quitting my job. And I just had
Mm.
all this, I had these imaginations.
What was your company?
It was isogenics.
When you said starting my life, I thought it'd be isogenics.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because they say start your life.
That's true. They do. That's true. But it was an amazing experience. I did it for about a year, and that was really like my first kick into coaching and personal and not personal development. I was doing another program that I was heavily involved into, but that's how I found isogenics. Um, but anyway, I was really like I was concerned about like looking good online, comparing myself to all the other coaches out there. Um,
Gotta look
It
healthy.
gotta look healthy, gotta look good. Um, and I looked really good online, and on the outside, I was struggling. I didn't have the business that I wanted, and I had a really well-paying job, but I didn't have the relationship that I wanted. And I found myself always in these similar relationships, like meeting someone. It's really amazing in the beginning. Everything looks really good. I pretend to look really good, and then something fizzles out, right? And it happened with this one particular instance. I met this guy, really liked him. We hit it off. It was like I was imagining like us doing yoga together and white picket fence and getting married, and just like really imagine that, but I could never tell him that, right? I couldn't really be brave and tell him how I really felt about him, right? I mean, of course, I just met him. I don't have to tell him all of that, right? But like, I didn't. I couldn't. I was afraid of being vulnerable.
Mm.
And then a couple weeks later, same thing. We fizzled. Our connection fizzled, and I remember I was sitting at home, and I, didn't hear back from him, and I noticed the shift, and I remember just feeling like total shit. And then I was looking through my phone. I had all these contacts in my phone, I had all these different friends, but I didn't feel comfortable calling anybody. Like I didn't feel comfortable telling anyone, "Hey, I just got dumped. I feel like shit. Could you just hear me?" I was like, "No," because I spent so much energy looking really good on social media and super powerful, right? So it was in that moment I realized, wow, the reasons why I don't have the friendships that I want to have, or the relationship that I want to have, or even the business that I want to have is because I'm not being authentic. I'm being inauthentic and pretending and wearing some sort of mask.
Mm.
So I was feeling vulnerable AF, and I just wanted to have real conversations with friends and just get people together. I didn't have a space. I didn't know of a space where that was happening where I was in New York City. And I was just like, I couldn't even help myself. I'm like, I was like, all right, I'm calling a dinner vulnerable AF, and I'm just getting my friends together, friends that I really wanted to know more, and inviting them to dinner. And I was planning on guiding these kinds of conversations or these different kinds of conversations. And the first meeting, there was 6 people, and then there was 18 people, then 25, then it's kept getting bigger and bigger. And then I just became obsessed with expanding it and growing it.
Yeah, it must feel really good. I mean, here we live in Bali and we're more used to these kinds of interactions, but like even a couple of years ago, I'd be like, whoa, that's incredible when I discovered this way of relating. Not saying that I'm always in that way of relating. We all have work to do, but
Yeah.
I could imagine the power of having it in a big city where it's like so new.
Yeah. Yeah. People were waking up in the morning, doing the same thing, going to a job that they hated, rushing, working until late at night, or, you know, not feeling connected to anybody in their cubicle and then going back home to their cubicle. Like they just didn't have these kinds of events or conversations. And in New York, the way that people connected was through drinking and happy hour, right? Or like that's the normal way of relating or going out or going out for lunch and just getting really wasted and going back to work. Like I remember because I was there. I did that.
It's Friday.
Yeah, it's Friday. Oh, it's a weekend. Let's get really wasted. Right. And it's like, and if you do that, totally fine, right? Like I'm not judging you, but there's the missing piece is meaningful connection. Like what would it be like if we can actually get to know each other and ask each other real questions versus like, oh, how are you? Fine. Same, the same surface level conversations that I remember having at the office.
So vulnerable AF, deconstructing that. So AF stands for as fuck.
Yes.
And vulnerable, like, how would you define vulnerable? How is it different to being authentic?
It's similar, similar concept, same thing. It's vulnerable. Being vulnerable is truth, right? Sharing your truth. It's the desire for deeper intimacy and connection.
Is it weak?
No. So that's another tweak that I love really honing in on with my clients and in my workshops is really empowering people to see that vulnerability is not a weakness. It's one of our greatest strengths.
It's courage.
It's super courageous. Yeah.
I'm interested to, there's like so many angles there. I'm interested into maybe sharing, because the people who listen, I like to give a bit of an entrepreneurial twist on it, on the conversation. And what's interesting with you doing that brand is 2 angles. One is how being vulnerable for anyone, especially in the personal development, coaching, or who builds a personal brand, how vulnerability is an important asset in building your brand, an important way to be, like, of course, in everyday life, but also in your brand and business. And also how you build a life and business around something you're passionate about. So, I mean, do you encourage people, like coaches, for example? You talked about personal development. Well, in personal development, sometimes it's like, as you say, like I got my shit together and I want to look like this. And that's kind of the paradox of personal development, is then you develop that mask, right? So how do you advise people to show themselves truly in life, but also to reflect that in their business, in their personal brand?
Yeah. That's a really good question. So I call that mask like the Superwoman mask or the Superman mask. Like, oh, I'm good. I'm fine. Meanwhile, what's underneath that is something deeper, right? Maybe a withhold, Um, and when I was in in personal development, I did landmark for many, many years, and I was trained in doing trained in leading landmark, so and coaching programs. So I was like very, very into it, and it was so amazing. It was so transformational for me, and I totally recommend anybody who hasn't done something like landmark or any kind of personal development program to definitely try it, give it a try. But at that time, that that kind of work was also super masculine and
Mm.
really focused on getting over things. Like I remember like during times when maybe I wasn't feeling
Mm.
my most empowered self.
Even the word self-improvement.
Yeah. When I didn't feel amazing, I had to get off of it or get over it really quickly,
Mm.
right? Or there was this not that I had to, but there was this pressure.
Mm.
So what I am really into right now and how I've morphed into softening, which is vulnerability, right? And even at that time when I started vulnerable AF, I was still in that masculine go, go, go place and just slowly softening. And now I really serve from my feelings, right? Like I encourage feelings. I encourage, yeah, like not dwelling in the story, but to feel like what's actually there and to find power in that. That's where whatever that pain is, that story is that you have, that's your power.
Mm.
And tying it back to entrepreneurs and leaders, yeah, being vulnerable as a leader is so brave. And whether you choose to do it or not, that is going to be your catalyst to having people relate to you. You're not relatable, in my opinion, from when I see entrepreneurs and leaders who are out there who have amazing missions and have something amazing to share or a gift that they're sharing to the world, and they're not um, they're afraid of going there or actually being honest about like what it was like for them, right? And they just cover up little things because they're afraid, oh, if I tell them how I'm really doing, then they're not going to
Mm.
buy from me. So that's the difference between authenticity and calculated vulnerability. So sometimes I made a post about this recently: calculated vulnerability versus authenticity. And Brene Brown talks about that. Um, like there's a difference between sharing something because you're expecting an outcome, or you're
Mm.
like, if I share it, then people will like me more, versus like I'm sharing this because I know that it'll make a difference in someone's life.
That's super interesting because I was going to ask you about, like, we talk about being more vulnerable. Let's take social media
Mm.
and sharing, but sometimes I can read a post and I will have, or even let's say maybe me, I have the temptation of doing a post almost a bit like a victim, And
Mm.
I'm like, okay, well, is that vulnerability or is it like a, some kind of victim consciousness looking for attention, which is not wrong, but it's like, um yeah, I don't know, it's hard to draw the line between, okay, I want to be open, and like this is not really something I'm wanting to put on people in a way,
Yeah,
like how
totally.
do you how do you feel into when your vulnerability is, yeah, you feel into if it's serving the other person, that's the intention, rather, because, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's hard sometimes to see. I just know sometimes I would, let's say I would read something and I would feel like, um it's too much.
Yeah.
Not it's too much as a person, it's too much of what they're feeling, but as like this, it's kind of like really looking for my attention in a way.
That's really good awareness. And what I would say to that is, if you feel like, I don't know if I don't want to share that, right? That's you honoring yourself and listening to yourself. right? That's the difference between like the masculine approach, like forcing, I have to share this thing. This is what I said I would do. I have to make this post, right? So I'm speaking to
The
entrepreneurs.
vulnerability Olympics.
Yeah, it's oh my God, one of my mentors, Rick Smith, says that. He's like,
That's where I get
this
it
is
from.
not the vulnerability Olympics. Right? He talks about the tender edge,
Yeah.
right? Like really honoring your tender edge. Like the tender edge is like Rick Smith talks about this. He's like, a tender edge is like that edge between like your comfort zone and the one above or beyond your comfort zone. So you have like 1 foot beyond your comfort zone and 1 foot on your at your comfort zone. And honor and vulnerability and authenticity is honoring that edge. Like, you know what? This is my edge. You know what? Maybe I haven't worked out that story yet. And until you worked out that story that you have that you want to share, then not everybody deserves to hear it. And maybe it's not time to share that. And only, and this is from experience, when I can feel shameless about something, right? Or share, if I'm going to talk about a time when I felt shame or share something really vulnerable that maybe, we're at a time when I felt guilty, a time when I felt shame. I am going to share that because my intention is to create connection and intention is to inspire someone to share their story or inspire someone to move past an experience that a similar experience. And if I feel there's still some shame about it, it's not the right time. And honoring that.
So usually it'd be like you have had shame, but when you feel it's kind of the right time that you've integrated it, it's when you share.
Yeah, and I like what you said about victim consciousness. I've been really honing in on that myself. I found there's the Lynn Forrest. She is amazing. She's this woman. She I don't know, have you heard of the drama triangle or the victim triangle?
No.
She talks about the victim consciousness and how there's the drama triangle and then there's the higher version triangle. So like the higher version triangle is like your witness, like you witnessing what you're doing without judgment, right? But the victim is at the bottom, victim. And then however you project, or whatever you're, coming from, it's either like your rescuer or persecutor. So it's like kind of, are you trying to like fix out of guilt or help because you want to be a rescuer, you want to be like the helper, the savior, or are you, going into persecutor, like blaming and shaming and projecting, right? So it's like, where is that story that you're sharing coming from? And are you sharing it can you share it without judgment? Like, hey, like this is what happened. And that's what happened. And it doesn't mean anything about me. And until you can share that, until you can feel that, and that will help you prevent the vulnerability hangover, which a lot of people experience, right? Like if you don't know what the vulnerability hangover is, it's this like you just shared something really vulnerable or brave, and then the next day or 5 minutes later, you're like, oh no, I said too much. Oh no, was that too much?
It's tricky because sometimes that uncomfortability is actually only you knows, but it's like that sign that you should actually exactly say that. So it's like, it's subtle.
That's the thing about what vulnerability is. It's risky. It's uncomfortable. It's like, can you be willing to be with the risk? Like, are you willing to be with the 50% chance that you will hear crickets? Or can you be with the 50% chance that you'll receive a shit ton of love, which might also be really vulnerable to receive? Yeah. So it's like, I really want to share that. It's really scary. And it's risky. Vulnerability is, telling someone I love you. And maybe not hearing and the risk of not hearing it in return. And it's like, I said it because it's my truth and I'm not, and versus the calculated, I'm going to share it so I can get more love from you. Yeah.
Yeah, it's life really. I mean, life risky, and life is that openness and courage. So it's beautiful, and yeah, I feel like in our society we try to protect ourselves so much, right? So
yeah,
it's yeah, it takes courage, but the rewards are worth the risks.
Yeah, totally.
I'm interested also if you can share a little bit about how you manage to build also your business and your life around that thing you're passionate about, because even if it's a different topic and someone listens to us and they're a breath worker or different things, I have a lot of admiration for people who build also their business through their passion, monetize it. How's the journey been on that?
It's been a ride for sure. I mean, I started my side hustle, my passion, leading in-person workshops in New York City. And I was leading them every other week, sometimes once a month. I did one day retreats. I also led at festivals. I led at Burning Man, so I really loved bringing this conversation to different parts of the world. It was really fun and exciting. And then, I know I also had a full-time job when I first started. I was always building communities or helping startups build their community. So that was also another facet of Vulnerable AF, which it was a community, or it is a community. So, how I started building it into a business, it just happened. Like, it was almost like I just couldn't help it. And every time I tried to run away from it or I tried to stop it, because like I said, vulnerability has been my biggest pain. So I did not think that I would ever be teaching vulnerability. Like, if one of my landmark coaches could share the story of like the time when like I literally I wouldn't even share, like, I wouldn't even tell the group that me and my ex broke up like the night before because I was so afraid of looking bad. And I remember like I was so afraid of that. So like me teaching this, it's like, it's not because, I mean, I love it. I love it. And I'm just so called to it. Every time I try to run away or I try to like do something else, get a different job, try to quit. I've tried to quit a couple of times and like, I always come back to it. It's just like, it's a gift, and it's turned into different versions. Like, so obviously with Corona, then I brought it online. So I never thought I could lead what I was leading from in person to online, but I made it happen, and I made a different version of it. And then I led a few online programs last year. And this year I'm still leading online courses. But I'm transitioning into, okay, like, what's the next version of Vulnerable AF? And because I've transformed so much since I first started this, as like a girl who just like struggled with heartbreak. Now it's like, oh, I had bigger fish to fry too, of, really, really like taking off my own layers, continuing to take layers off of, when it comes to vulnerability, and being a founder of a company called Vulnerable AF, like sometimes there's a lot of pressure to be vulnerable too.
Yeah. It's funny, as you were answering my question, I was like, there's a lot of pressure for her right now to be vulnerable and authentic. It's like if you start pretending when I ask you about how your business is doing.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, like there's pressure at her, which is like why I wanted to quit so many times. I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. I can't.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe after a certain time, it so becomes second nature. But for me, it's still a concept that's quite new. I've done Rick's retreats, awakened leadership, authentic relating, and I'm actually seeing someone at the moment that I met at authentic relating, and it's amazing because we kind of it's kind of there's the game and the workshop, and that's the everyday life, and how do you
Mhm.
embody that? And just sometimes I'm like, I don't want to do it. I feel lazy to go into that place that's a bit uncomfortable of the things that I feel like sharing, but yeah, I don't always find the courage to, in a way, to expose myself.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a practice. I think
Mm. So
vulnerability, it's
how
like,
is it after like 2.5 years doing vulnerable AF? Do you still find you have sometimes that place where you don't really want to share, or it's become second nature?
it becomes second nature.
Mm.
It becomes second. And I went through, I go through my shifts. Like
Mm.
last year at a time when I was, really obsessed with the online world, and like, I was really big. I got really big at one point, and then my ego got really big, and then the minute my ego got big
Mm.
is the minute I stopped being authentic, and I
Mm.
lost that part of me, and that was a time when I had a $0 launch.
Interesting.
So I had a $0 launch last year, one of them. And it was at that time when I was trying so hard to look good. And like I went right back into that pattern of 2.5 years ago when I first started my business.
Mm.
It was like I stepped into this new version of me last year, and I
Mm.
got caught up. I got lost in the sauce, lost in the comparison
Mm.
game about what are people doing online, needing to like say, have the perfect framework on my Instagram posts. And I got so caught up in that and
Mm.
launched a program, $0 launch, because of the energy that I had behind it and who I was being. And that was another reminder of like, oh, this is this is why my work is important. And it had me really evaluate, like, hold on,
Mm.
what the fuck am I doing? Who am I? What am I really talking about?
Mm.
What's my mission? And I took a break for two months, actually.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Paradoxically, it's if people feel it's too much into the perfect landing page and the perfect
Yeah.
script, that
Oh, yeah. Oh
can
my
be
God.
less attractive.
Anybody who's listening to this right now, if you are struggling with how to get your message out, and you're like worrying about like the funnels and the ads and the perfect message and the perfect template and the perfect landing page, it's not about that.
Mm.
Yeah, that stuff, it works, it matters, right? It's about the energy behind it, who you're being, and about
Mm.
who you're serving. It's not about you. The minute you make it about you, people feel it, people smell
Get real.
it.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I think people also are more educated now. They can smell it. Maybe 4 years ago, 3 years ago was kind of
It's like,
okay. The
oh,
perfect funnel works, but now people are like they've seen it.
yeah,
I think is even if you're going to be successful, you've trapped yourself in that image.
yeah, yeah,
It's probably
totally.
better that it doesn't work.
Honestly, like the some of my favorite teachers now, like their websites suck. Like their Instagram isn't aesthetically amazing, right? But they have gifts, and they're so in conviction about their gifts and like who they are, that like it's
Mm.
it doesn't matter. Like their emails they're not that great.
Mm.
And it's just like, but it's who they are and what their message is that matters.
Mm. We talked a bit about relationships,
Hmm.
and actually, so doing authentic relating. Also, I interviewed a friend recently about polyamory and open relationship, and she recommended a book called More Than Two. I don't know if you've
I
heard
heard
about
of
it.
it.
Yeah, if I may, I know you're interested also in that area of open relationships, and I don't know, listening to that book about polyamory, I felt it was so close to authentic relating. uh, like, uh, yeah, why?
I didn't read the book, but I can imagine, 'cause I've lived it.
Mm.
Yes, I've been open relating or in open relationships for over 5 years now. So I'm I'm single, and I'm not am not interested. I think my next relationship, I'm definitely interested in more of a monogamous relationship, but being in open relating and being polyamorous for a while, it really helped me deepen levels of intimacy that I didn't know how to reach before. Like just the thing that I was turned on the most about was the navigating
Mm.
difficult conversations part because it's all about it's all about communication.
Yeah.
It's about intimacy, it's about connection, and the minute you're the thing where it doesn't work is when you're trying to people please.
Mm.
So the minute you're doing something for your partner because you think that that'll make you cool, or you think that that's what your other partner wants, or
Mm.
that's what your partner wants, then that's when it gets mucky and it gets nasty and weird, right? Because or
Yeah.
especially if you're listening and you're interested in open relating, or you're unsure, um, be really clear in your communication. Ask really interesting questions, be curious, and be honest with yourself. Take
Mm.
off the mask of, oh, well, my partner wants this, so I'm not going to say anything and I'm going to pretend to be cool about it,
Mm.
when in fact I'm not.
Resonates.
hmm
Yeah, I feel that there's a huge backlash, especially in intimate relationships, and especially in those conscious more communities, when you be the people pleaser that avoid confrontation, and you don't want to hurt the other person, and that's probably deep in us in society. But then I know recently for me that's something that has been so clear, the backlash it creates.
Yeah, I think, and now that I'm dating, I'm noticing similar conversations than that I had in the past of meeting someone and and someone saying, "Oh, I don't want an I don't want a monogamous relationship," and I just I want to be open. So I hear that a lot, and it makes me curious about like the fear of deeper intimacy with
Mm.
one person, or the fear of
Well,
mhm.
there's even here a definition of openness, because
Yeah.
if you tell me I'm open, I don't want monogamy, to me it's a contradiction, because people, they often think open relationship is you'll have multiple sexual partner, but not to me. To me, being open means being open. So it can mean being open to being celibate for a time. It can be being open to being
Yeah.
monogamous, or to have different partners. So you're not
That's a
really
good point.
open.
Yeah, some people think, "Oh, I want an open relationship," and it means that I can just mess around with anybody that I
Mm,
want. No. If you are interested in
mm,
open relating, you have to put your seatbelt on and be ready for the ride,
yeah.
because it is a level of it requires a level of intimacy, where all your shit is gonna come up,
Mm,
and as soon as you're, like, wishy-washy and shadowy around it,
mm,
then that's when the fear, the things that could go wrong, go wrong.
mm,
And yeah, I like what you said though about the like clarity in the open, like I'm open for this and I'm open
mm,
for that. Like I'm interested in monogamy right now, and I will always see myself as someone who's like I'm open
yeah.
to new tools and situations, and like I'm a really curious person too, so I'm really open to conversations.
Mm.
Yeah. So
How does it look like in terms of business partnerships and doing business with other people? Because that's also an intimate thing.
mm, I think
Do you have, like, I don't know, things you bring into the business world from vulnerable, authentic relating way?
yeah. Yeah, I think for partnerships, it's not everybody that you like should be your business partner. Or just because you like this person doesn't mean that you should work together, right? I think what works well for me and something that I'm getting more clear on is, and I see someone that I think I want to work with, or I see someone that I know is really amazing and has like incredible gifts to share. I I get clear, like, okay, what can I bring to the table? What can they bring to the table? Or what are the gifts that they have that I don't have? And how can we join forces? And when it comes to authentic relating, and I'm imagining that you're asking about communication and clarity. Yeah, having those clear conversations, because sometimes, or what I see when people are afraid of having those hard conversations, you skip over the conversations that need to be had. Like, hey, what what does this look like? How long do we plan on working together? How's our connection going? Um, what is there something that, you know, that I said that bothered you? Right. So you can clear out whatever's in the way and create new possibilities in your business partnership or your partnership, right? Just like being willing to have those difficult conversations. Like, my ex-partner and I, and we also did work together. We did some work together too. We would have monthly check-ins and we would ask each other really brave conversations, and they were vulnerable and honest. And it created this clarity with our business and our relationship. Yeah.
Yeah. And do you have, it's interesting because I'm thinking about asking you for tools, but thinking about this, I want to ask you, like, how do you feel about using tools for authentic relating? While some people might think from the minute you use tools, maybe it's less authentic.
I think tools are always great. Tools are structure is great. Like, I think, like, for me, when I work with clients, I always set agreements. Right. And that's authentic relating is setting the container, setting the agreements of what our relationship is going to look like. Setting up expectations.
And I cut you there because I feel like sometimes when I want to be very clear in the communication, there's something that comes, and that will come also in the intimate romantic relationships, that can be felt as killing the flow. As being calculating too much. Putting things in boxes with labels.
Yeah. I see what you mean. And whenever I'm feeling stuck or like heady, it's because I'm in my head. And something that I help my clients do is I help them drop from their head into their heart. So the moment you're feeling like, you're coming, let's say you're having a conversation with someone, or there's a difficult conversation that you want to have with someone and you want to clear it up, and the tools. You're like, all right, this is the tools that I learned from authentic relating, or like anything that that you're bringing to the conversation. And
taking your notes.
The minute you you're like, all right, this is the thing. It's like, okay, what is my head saying? And what does my heart want? What's underneath that? And even saying, hey, I want to have this, there's something that's been on my heart that I want to share with you. And it's been really difficult to share. And I'm noticing that I'm in my head about it. I'm noticing that I'm thinking of how to say it, and it's really hard. Just even naming it, naming the difficulty.
Yeah, as you shared about it, I was just thinking, like, if I want to enter a conversation and I want to use my authentic relating ninja skills, but then I'm in the head. I'm like, oh, that's the way to do it, and it can be felt. Just a way of sharing, hey, I really value our relationship and I really want it to go well. And for me, it's important that there's a certain frame, just so I make sure it's fine for everyone. And I've learned these tools, but I just feel a bit awkward sharing it with you because I feel maybe you'll think I label my stories, that you'll think I label things and that I'm too much in the mind, like sharing it that way. in the end would make me able to put that frame into place. I think is important but with sharing the story behind it and more from the heart.
Yeah. And I think that was really beautiful what you shared. Like, hey, it makes more sense to me to have structure. And I just want to know how that, can you be with that? Can you just be with me in my structure and know that I'll get there?
Like, sometimes the very same thing, when it's said like this, it makes, I can feel it's an openness in the heart that it creates, either as I share it, just but also when someone shares that with me.
Yeah, like just asking, like, can you just be with it? And then and just naming it. It's really beautiful to name it.
And so do you have tools you want to, we're approaching the end of the episode, but if you have like maybe a tool you want to share with our audience on how to share vulnerability?
I guess my 3 pillars are, vulnerability, courage, clarity. And how it's for vulnerability, it's like, it's naming the truth, just naming it. Courage, having the courage to share it, be you, have the courage to, set your boundaries, say your no, and then just being clear about your desires, clear about what you're looking for, what you need, what you want. And like those 3 steps, is your roadmap to finding that truth within you versus looking externally or looking outside for the approval, or looking to people please, or comparing yourself, feeling like when at the moment you feel like you're not enough. Could you go back to like, okay, what's my truth? And is this courageous? And or can I be courageous to share my truth right now? And is this clear? Yeah.
And that's the ultimate freedom, right? Is that authenticity. In this podcast, I get people, we talk about location independence and freedom of time and financial freedom, but really being authentic is the ultimate freedom.
Yeah. And like, and just naming it and letting go of the guilt and shame you have about it. And something, I can leave people with, which is really present for me right now. In that time when I was in the down a couple months ago, when I, it was like the $0 launch was just like a small snippet, but like that was like
the $0 launch.
The $0 launch.
Could write a book about it.
The $0 launch. It was a small snippet of what happened, right? But it turned into a big mess, and like ego death, smack in the face, everything fell apart, right? And I allowed myself to fall apart, and I allowed myself to feel like shit. I allowed myself to feel ashamed, fear, all of it. And in that time, I almost quit again, and I was like, you know what? If there's anyone in the world who's out there right now and feels like shit, or feels like they can't come back from a mistake they made, or, doing something that that didn't work out like they hoped they would, or sharing something and it, blew up, right? Can you still love yourself? Can you still know that you're worthy of love and belonging, and that you can come back, and that and at any moment you can recreate your life? So that's why I came back again in the new version of Vulnerable AF, and the new version of me, always like resurrecting myself every year. Like, oh, that's why I do this work, is to show people who think they can't come back, an opportunity to reinvent themselves in every moment.
I can feel it when you share, like,
Mm.
and I'm sure the listener can feel it too. Just relax. It drops the pressure of the masks we put on ourselves so much. It's so beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
How can people hear more about you, follow you, and what's next for you?
Yeah, so I'm really active on social media, on Instagram, on Facebook. You can find me at Veronica Kaulinis, at Vulnerable AF. You can find me on my website. I'll share my website with you. So I have courses and I lead workshops. I lead Vulnerable AF every month online, and I lead masterminds. And my next program that I'm launching this week, actually, it's called Unapologetic AF. So it's going to be my next group program, and it's going to be for women this time. It's going to be all about helping entrepreneurial women be more vulnerable and unapologetic. So
amazing.
yeah.
Do you like Peter Kelly?
I love Peter
Yeah,
Kelly.
because I read her book twice that I love. Her F is Hiring, and she talks a lot about being human AF. So that made me think of it.
Yeah, being human. Embrace your messiness. There's one love, accept your mess. That was a tidbit that my friend Amy gave me when I was in my mess. She's like, I accept your mess.
Wow. Yeah, that was a book, I think, that really opened me to it. I loved her vibe, Peter Kelly.
Oh, yeah, me too.
And just what I was sharing about it, I remember I started personal development more with books. I'm going to go vulnerable here, with books that are for men about, pleasing women, right? And some are very manipulative, like The Game. And I read one by Mark Manson. It was called Models How to Attract Women Through Honesty. And actually, it was a lot about being authentic to attract women, but being really authentic, not playing it as a game, And it was just a great book on it, and that gapped my interest in pleasing the woman.
Yeah, and it's like it's vulnerable. It's like vulnerability is such an integrated, healthy quality that is really it's attractive. It's also really sexy when someone can just be themselves.
So sexy,
super sexy,
so sexy. Yeah,
gotta name a course, Sexy AF.
Yeah. Well, thanks you for your sexy vulnerability.
Thank
Veronica. Do you have a last word for the listener?
I accept your mess. Those are my last words.
Thank you, Veronica.
Thank you to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you for taking some of your precious time to listen to this podcast. If you stayed until the end, I assume it was insightful. If you like this podcast, please share with friends. Remember that if you tag us in your Instagram story at the Light Leaders Podcast, we will repost. Tell us what you've learned. You can also leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Now, if you think I can help you grow your soul mission business, you can register for a free 15-minute coaching call with me. Go to www.thelightleaders.org/free call. Thank you again, and let's co-create the conscious new earth together.